I know we've all been there when you're starting a book and you're not sure how it's gonna go, but you push through and then you're like, dang, that really was a waste of my precious time. Luckily for you, I read a lot of books, 34 in the past 3 months to be specific, and I'm here to tell you which ones are great recommendations to add to your TBR versus the ones that were wastes of my time and I don't think you need to give the time of day to either. August, September, and October were a reading journey for me, and we have books on every side of the spectrum. So I figure we'll just go in order, starting with the very first book that I finished in August, Emily Henry's Great Big Beautiful Life. I don't mean to start this video on a controversial take. This book was a 1.75 for me. I have loved Emily Henry's books up to this point. This one just wasn't my style, it wasn't my romance. To reference my Goodreads thoughts, I was trying so hard to love it. It felt too much and not enough all at once. I love the setting, but the romance tipped into I love you and I can't live without you a bit speedily. It left me behind. If you want to watch my experience, there is a reading vlog, one of my few reading vlogs on this channel. It does include this one. I have heard people who disagree. In my opinion, this one is not worth your time. The next book I read in August was Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. This one I listened to on audiobook, which I did have a good experience. Like, I thought it was a good audiobook. We follow an author named Grady who's on the phone with his wife Abby when he hears her slam on her brakes and then doesn't hear anything else. He rushes to the location that he knows she's at and finds her car still running with the headlights on, the doors open, and no sign of Abby. A year later, Grady is still overcome with grief and sadness, but is trying to write his next book and ends up landing where he can stay at a private cabin on a little Scottish isle where everybody knows everybody. When he gets to this island, he sees someone who looks exactly like his missing wife, and the story goes from there. My rating and my recommendation of this book are not going to match, but my rating was a 2.5. It was not like my favorite book. It felt quite average. However, if you're someone who's like stuck in a rut or just wanting something different, wanting something that's not going to go the way you suspect it or not end the way you suspect it, I do think Alice Feeney is good for that. In this book, I will say towards the end, I was like, what? But if you're looking for that feeling, then I recommend it. Not the best thriller I've ever read, but an interesting plot. You'll realize we're going on a bad streak here because the next book I read was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This follows Aiden, who is a radio host for a love show in Baltimore, and he no longer believes in the idea of love. One night, a young girl calls into his radio station asking for romance advice for her mom, which turns into this whole radio show trying to set her mom up and find her a great partner. It is a contemporary romance, so those two main characters start romancing. This book I also just don't find to be worth your time. I also gave it a 2.5 stars, just average. There are better romances. I felt like the book was much longer than it needed to be. It was very lengthy but had lots of lulls in the plot, and it was not atmospheric or comedic enough to be like enjoying things if the plot's not moving forward. It also had the longest spicy scene that I have ever witnessed in a book, and I was listening to it at that point. I genuinely think it was like 25 minutes of my life was stuck on this scene. As you can imagine, after these 3 books, I was in quite a slump, wondering if reading was even good anymore. Are there good books out there? This is when the hero of our story shows up. One of my favorite books that I have read to date, Whistle by Linwood Barkley. Full 5-star for me. I feel like the best way to describe it to you is just that there's a creepy train. It's horror from a creepy train. Is it a curse? Is it possessed? Is it a coincidence? Is it a living being? Creepy train book was so good and so unique to me. I was kind of bummed because I wanted to look at other books that Linwood Barkley has written, and I maybe still will read some of these, but listening to interviews that he's done, he was really like going out on a limb with this one. Like, this one is very different than the other books he has written per him, which I'm so bummed by because I would love to read just like all kinds of books like this, but hopefully that means whatever he comes out with in the future could maybe be the same. Sorry for not giving you more plot. I feel like you just need to know creepy train, and it was amazing. So right around this time, I was still a little butthurt about the great BBL of Emily Henry's that I didn't like, and I needed to remember, did I actually like Emily Henry's writing, or was I just like younger without a fully developed frontal lobe? So I listened to Book Lovers, which had previously been my favorite Emily Henry book, and re-listening to it, it was another 5-star for me. I did not change my opinion. It is still my favorite Emily Henry book. It is bookish, it is cute, it is witty, it has a lovely kind of side plot about sisters. Emily Henry is still a great writer, and Book Lovers is evidence of that to me. Great Big Beautiful Life just wasn't it. Following Book Lovers is when I got into my 48-hour readathon, if you remember that. So I started that readathon by reading Under the Bayou Moon by Valerie Fraser Luss. This is a sweet book about a girl who's trying to branch out of her hometown and find out who she is on her own, and so she accepts a teaching job in this small town in the Bayou of Louisiana, and what follows is just a sweet historical romance with ups and downs and kind of perfect characters and a little romance, and it's very sweet. It's not too deep, but the setting was great, and it was just a nice quick read for me. I gave it a 4-star, and I think it's a great palate cleanser that can be worth your time if that's what you're looking for. If you like things that get really weedy and really deep with the characters or have like many twists and turns, then maybe this isn't the book for you. But if you just need something kind of fresh and sweet and feel good, there are some sad moments, but like overall feel good, this is a good book for you. Next, I move into Margo's Got Money Troubles by Ruthie Thorpe, which is a contemporary that I gave 4.25 stars. I was so intrigued this whole story. Basically, Margo had an affair with her English teacher, got pregnant, had the baby, and now is having money troubles. And her dad, who has been estranged for the longest time and was a professional wrestler, shows up at her door looking for somewhere to stay. And so he moves in as a roommate. Margo starts an OnlyFans to help with money. And it's just so quirky and funny and so very real, but like unique and funny. It's quirky, but it's a good time, in my opinion, and I definitely think this is one that is worth your time. Following that, I read All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. I don't own a lot of these books that I've read because I do love using my local library. I do own this one though. Our main character, Isabel's son, disappeared from his crib in the middle of the night, and she has not been able to sleep since. She is desperately trying to find her son and figure out what happened to him, even when the police have gone relatively cold on the case. Hoping for anything that'll help her find something out, she agrees to be interviewed by a true crime podcaster, and there are some leads to her son's disappearance that start popping up. Now, this could be affected by the fact that I was reading it during a readathon, and so it was like late at night. I've been reading all day. To me, this was a 2.75. I think others of Stacey Willingham I would say are worth your time before this one, but if you really like Stacey Willingham's other books, then this could be a good one to go to. It was a little slow and felt like a little claustrophobic to me, but the ending was interesting, and like the twist at the end was an interesting way to go about it, in my opinion. So if you're looking for something, maybe not like your very first pick, but it could definitely still be on your list. After that, I read The Graceview Patient, which came out last month, but I had an advanced reader copy. In The Graceview Patient, Margaret has a rare autoimmune disorder that she is entering a clinical trial to be cured, but the clinical trial works similarly to chemo, where it has to break down your entire immune system before it could build it back up. And in the time that Margaret's in the hospital, weird things start happening. It becomes horrific and kind of insane, and as you're reading the book, you really have to kind of figuring out like what's real and what's not real. Will I ever find out what's real and what's not real? How much of this is just in Margaret's head, and is she like delirious or hallucinating, or how much of this is like real and sinister? If you like clear-cut answers at the end of books, this would not be a book for you, but if you like books that just dive into questions and take you along for the journey and have some wild scenes in them, this would be a very intriguing read for you. I gave it 3.5. The next book I read was First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This is a thriller that I think is pretty unique compared to other thrillers. So if you're in a rut from reading thrillers because you feel like you're predicting it all, like they have very similar tropes, this could be a good one to get you out of that rut. You meet our main character, Evie Porter, who has a great group of friends, a cute little house, a nice boyfriend, but then you learn that Evie Porter doesn't actually exist, and the main character who we have met is taking on an identity that is not actually hers, and has done that many times before, and she has a mysterious boss who's behind it all. I would say this thriller feels different because it starts to feel almost more like spy-like, which is where it just is different than other books. But some things start going wrong, and our main character starts having to address things and figure out more about her boss and what she's actually doing, and some things from her past start coming up. So it really wasn't, I listened to it, it really was an intriguing listen and quite unique. I think it could definitely be worth your time. Now next we get into where I kind of had the idea of doing a video, but then I ended up just reading them on my own. I wanted to reread the books that made me a reader, so books that I remembered from when I was like a preteen or a child that I read, and just kind of reread them and see if they still held up. So I started the journey with The Fairy Tale Detectives by Michael Buckley, which is a series that I remember so much. It follows the sisters Grimm, who are in foster care after their parents disappeared. Their car showed up empty, like on the side of the road with just a red hand on the window. And since then, they've been in foster care. They haven't been able to find any living relatives until out of nowhere, their grandma is willing for them to move in with her. As they move in with their grandma, they're a little suspicious of her as she is kooky, does some weird things, and lives in this really weird town with interesting characters that as you meet them, you figure out they're fairy tale characters. I remember the rest of the series more so than I remember the first book. Reading the first book, it did hold up. I gave it a 2.5 though, because like it very much was middle grade fantasy, which I should have known going into it. I read it when I was a child. It is dense for a middle grade book, Like, as a child, it was very, very good. As an adult, I remember that it was nice to read, but I don't necessarily feel the need to like go into the rest of the series. So I don't necessarily think this one's worth your time, but if you have like a preteen or a child in your life that would like some good fantasy, don't let this series die. Make sure the kids of today are enjoying it just as much as I did. After that, I was remembering how much I loved re-listening to one of my favorite books, Book Lovers, and I thought, let me just re-listen to another feel-good favorite book. And so I listened to Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I again gave a 5-star. It held up just as much as it did the first time. It is such an interesting story following siblings in LA. Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author who I've enjoyed. I'm pretty sure every book I've read of hers. You maybe have heard about this book if you spend any time on booktube or on book talk, but definitely worth your time. And then my last book in August was Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle. This is a literary speculative fiction that I ended up giving 3.75 stars to. Our main character in this book gets what are called aftertastes, but it's literally a taste of a very specific meal that pop up in his mouth sometimes. And he learns that it's the spirit world's way of communicating with the people around him. He's sort of like a medium, and he decides to start learning how to use these in order to reconnect people with their lost loved ones to have one final meal together. So it's speculative fiction. You're like figuring out the rules with him. He's a lovable main character. He doesn't always treat himself the nicest, which like makes you sad as you're reading it because he's a lovable main character. It's relatively twisty. It has some romance in it. It doesn't quite end how you would expect it to, and I thought it was a very good read. If you're looking for something kind of new and fresh, this book is definitely worth your time. Moving on to September, we have some interesting reads. I feel like you can tell by now that I cross a lot of genres. Like, I really bounce around all over the place, which I feel like can be good for these videos because maybe something will strike a chord with you. The first book I read in September was The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. Now, I will say on Goodreads, this is rated an average of 4.37 stars with over 24,000 ratings. So that's like a very good average. People like this book. I agree. I gave it 4 stars as well. It's a sweet literary fiction, and I feel like its little blurb just describes it best. A darkly comic and warm-hearted novel about an old man on a cross-country mission to reunite with his high school crush, bringing together his adult daughter, 2 orphaned kids, and a cat who can predict death. PJ is an elderly man who is not where he would like to be in life. And one day he reads an obituary in the paper of his old high school rival, which in his head, of course, means then his first high school girlfriend, who that rival got married to, is now a widow. And so he comes up with the plan to take a road trip across the country to meet Michelle Cobb and try to reignite some sparks that maybe exist from when they were teenagers. However, before PJ can do that, 2 children fall into his lap who are now in his custody that he has to figure out what to do with, and he decides to just take on the road trip with him. So we are just figuring all of these dynamics out as we're going across the country. There are some just like classic scenes in here, and also some really funny scenes in here, and some really heartwarming scenes in here. It has a little touch of everything, and I do really think that this book is worth your time. After that, I thought that maybe it was time to start kind of getting into the autumnal feeling books, and so I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, who follows a witch who's invited to a home with 3 young witches who need like a teacher and a mentor to help support them. And in this world, witches tend to have to be isolated. That's just like in their rule book that not too many witches can be all together at once. So this little home that has all 3 of them is a secret that kind of has to stay a secret. There's found family in this. There's some whimsy in this. There's some romance in this. There's some twists towards the end in this. It really is just like a cozy fantasy romance. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think it is very sweet. I didn't want to be too picky on it. Like, there were parts of it that I would have wished would have been different or would have been written different, but it wasn't bad. So if you're at all intrigued, it's pretty lighthearted and pretty quick to get through with high reward. This author also recently came out with, it's another book with a pink cover, The Innkeeper's Guide. Let me look. A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. She recently came out with that, and people have been giving that high reviews as well. I have not gotten to that one yet, but I do think I will, in hopes that it has similar cozy, whimsical vibes as this one. September was kind of just my literary month. I next read The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. This one is also rated super high on Goodreads. It has an average rating of 4.22 stars with over 46,000 reviews. This one follows through 4 generations of a family and kind of their rises and falls through the years, including abandonment, addiction, happy moments, attempts at reconciliation. You really get close with the characters as you're reading it, and it just feels so utterly real life. I feel like this is the type of literary book that just infuses empathy into your soul. I gave it a 3.5. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad it existed. It wasn't my most favorite book in the whole world, like the one we're about to get to, but it was very good, and it's a very good human book if you're looking for something that just makes you feel connected with humans. Next, we get to one of my very favorite books, for which my Goodreads review just said wow, because I didn't know what else to say for it. This book is a 5-star. If there was higher than 5 stars, it may be up there, and that is My Friends by Frederick Bachman. Frederick Bachman's writing touches a piece of my soul. He gets you involved in characters in a way that I have not experienced anyone else do. That's why I feel like the books like The Bright Years just don't hit quite as hard for me, because I know writing like Frederick Bachman's exists and connections to characters like the ones that Frederick Bachman creates exists. My Friends is worth your time, if that's not clear. My Friends should shoot to the top of your reading list. It sort of revolves around this painting from this artist who is famous, and the painting is worth so much. But the painting depicts some friends out on a dock, and it's like, describing it doesn't even do it justice. You get to figure out like who these people are, how they're connected to each other, what's going on in their life, where they're ending up in life. And saying that just like does not do it justice. Like, this is such a good book that I really need you to read. It was so beautiful to me. It had me crying. It's really one that not only infuses empathy into you, but just also just like hope for humanity. And it doesn't do that by being like such a happy ending all the time, or being like unrealistically sappy sweet at all. Like, it is such real life and such real people, and includes hard stories, but includes very hard things that like keep an element of a bigger picture and hope in someone's life. Like, you can see their hardest moments, and then you can also see them grow through it and see the people that they lean on through it. And that's where I feel like it just hits so deep, because you just like feel that love tangibly through the words that he writes. It is so good. If you take nothing else from this video, take My Friends by Frederick Bachman. Kind of hard to go to the next one from there, but I needed something a little bit lighter, so I went back to my middle grade books that I had gotten from the library, and I read The Doll People by Anne M. Martin and Laura Godwin. This is a little middle grade fantasy, literally about a doll family who like comes to life whenever their human people aren't looking, and it's sort of a mystery in the sense that like one of the child dolls is like looking for an aunt that went missing decades before. There's like a new doll family that the family purchases, so like they show up, and the old doll family and the new doll family are like having to meet each other and like try to hang out while having like different rules and stuff. It's cute. Again, if you have a child, I think this is a good one. I don't think it's the type of middle grade book that necessarily stands up in the sense of like, if you're an adult, you will really enjoy it too. But if it's nostalgic for you, if you read it as a child, then it was just like an easy listen. I think it was a 4-hour audiobook that was very cute, but it doesn't have to be worth your time. I'm not gonna force it on you. But if you have a child, keep the like 90s and 2000s middle grade books alive, please. After that, I read The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Super interesting book. It's a historical horror fantasy that I gave 3.75 stars to. It follows 3 different storylines from the early 1900s, the 1930s, and then the 1990s, I believe. There are mysterious happenings, there are possible witches, but the witches are not the good guys in this book. They're creepy, they're scary. It was written well. It was a unique story to me because I don't read too many like this. The ending wasn't a twist. Like, I saw what was coming, but like it was still just super atmospheric and moody and gothic, and I enjoyed the historical elements too, and the like historical narrative, because I feel like that was done in an interesting way. There was some incest. I don't love that. That was weird to me. That was like one of the things where I was just like, this isn't like my perfect book, but it was interesting, and I think it could be worth your time, especially as we're in this kind of like autumnal phase, as things get kind of moodier in the winter. It could be a really good time for it. After that, you can see I'm kind of flip-flopping between heavy books and lighter books. After that, I read The Absent Author by Ron Roy, which is the first book in the A to Z mysteries, which was my childhood 100%. This took maybe 30 minutes to read. It's a very quick book. I loved these books as a kid, and I mean, it was quick, it was childish, but I loved this book as an adult too. It was a good mystery. I felt like even as an adult, I was like trying to think through like what was going on, and I remembered it towards the end. Like, I didn't predict it coming, I just like remembered having read it before. They're so cute, and you just follow these little 3 characters throughout all of the A to Z mysteries, and I'm kind of curious now of like just maybe listening to the audiobooks and seeing which other ones I remember, since they were so nostalgic. Of the ones so far that I had read that were middle grade, this was my favorite. And it was also the shortest and like least commitment, but it was so sweet, and it definitely lives up to my memories of it as a child. After that, I moved a little heavy again, and I read Indian Country by Shobha Rao. I haven't read too many books like this, and I was very intrigued. This is a semi-historical literary where an Indian couple immigrates to Montana after a very quick and unexpected arranged marriage, to where they are learning each other and learning a whole new country, much less not just the new country, but like rural Montana in a small town at the same time. And there start to be some mysterious events that end up in a body being found, and being the new brown people in town, that doesn't end up well for our main characters. So this book is slow. You spend a lot of time inside people's heads. There is a mystery to it and kind of some twists and turns as you're coming about finding out like what happened. But for the most part, it's more so just like a study on the people and the dynamics and relationships between people, and it was very slow paced, but I was intrigued the whole time. I think this is worth your time for like a unique subset of people who do enjoy slower paced literary books. I think then it is very interesting. If you're used to something that's like twisty and turny, fast paced, like you need like a flowery relationship or like a good comedy or something like that, that is not what this book is. I don't think I could do too many like this book, like all back to back in a row, but it did make me feel kind of studious just based on reading the slow-paced book that was kind of thick. But I was really interested, and this is a book that I have thought about quite a few times since finishing reading it. I don't remember even how it came across my TBR or why I picked it, but I'm glad that I did. I didn't feel like it was a waste of my time at all, but I think my recommendation for it is just kind of narrow, because I would hate to recommend you like a 480-page book that's super slow-paced and you end up not liking, you know? After that, I read the third book that I have here physically with me. That was Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. Weird book. This is a weird book. It's a literary that I gave 2.5 stars. It is a pretty dark book that looks into one mom's like early postpartum days, into even when her son's a toddler. But it's such a like stream of consciousness narrative. You are so in her head that as she's experiencing things like postpartum depression, some postpartum psychosis, it seems like, you're just reading it through her head. So you're kind of having to like infer some things about like what things look like from the outside, what is actually happening, but also like her perception of what's happening is real to her. And then as things grow, she's also like evaluating her marriage and her relationship and like having mixed feelings about her child. I feel like it just didn't hit with me, but I would be very interested people, like I've never had a child, I've never been pregnant. I'm very interested how it would hit with people who have had a child and or have experienced postpartum mental health struggles, whether depression or psychosis or anything. Like if this feels like an accurate representation, I just don't know. I just don't have anything good to like base it off of, any good experience. It was interesting to read, and I haven't read many books that are written in this way, but it wasn't my favorite to read, and it felt very claustrophobic as I was reading it. But I also think that probably was like good writing, because I think I was feeling the feelings that our mom in here was feeling, which were not pleasant, you know, like it wasn't happy for a while. So it's interesting. I want you to read it just so I can hear from other people what they think, because I don't know how to form my own thoughts about it well. But I don't think it was a waste of my time. I don't regret reading it. I just don't know how I feel, what I think about it. Barely even do I know how to talk about it. It was weird. And my last book of September was also kind of a flop, and I was so surprised by this because I really had high expectations, and that was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I gave this 2 stars. I did not like it. I just feel like it was very repetitive to me. I didn't find myself caring about the characters, and I really enjoyed, not that these are the same, they're both Japanese literature and like have small stories that make up a big story. That's where they're similar, and maybe like a little magical realism. I really liked What You're Looking For Is in the Library. I really liked that. And so I thought that Before the Coffee Gets Cold was going to be similar to that and just be like tied together short stories. And instead it was more of a narrative following the coffee shop and some of the people in the coffee shop. But so every time sorry, I'm speaking to you as if you know what this is about. I feel like it is a pretty popular book, but it basically follows a coffee shop where you can go back and visit another time, like another moment in time, as long as you come back before your coffee gets cold. However, there are lots of rules that go along with you doing this, and every single time any character was going to go back in time and come back before the coffee got cold, we had to go through the rules again about like how it works, how it happens, what you have to do, everything. And then the stories of the people actually doing it, I didn't really care about. So unfortunately, I feel bad because this is like a really great book to some people. this book did not feel worth my time. It felt like a waste of my time, which made me so sad because I had such high expectations for it. And like I've heard about it for years, and I feel like in my head I've always thought like, oh, I'll read this when the time is right and it's gonna hit so well, and it just didn't hit so well. So we ended September on kind of a negative note. Just for us to enter October, that still continues our wide spectrum of genres and ratings. The last book on the little middle grade adventure that I was going on was Double Identity by Margaret Peterson Haddix. If you are anywhere near my age, I was born in 2000, do you remember Margaret Peterson Haddix? Because her books were like they were always checked out of the media center in elementary school. She has so many good series. She has like Among the Hidden, if you remember those series. She has, was it the Found series? It was like Found, Lost, Stolen, something like that. She wrote Uprising, which I do want to read again. She has so many good books, but one of her good books was Double Identity. And this follows Bethany, who one night her parents wake her up and drive her into the middle of nowhere, and they're acting very strange. Her mom is sobbing, her dad is very secretive, and they drop her off with an aunt that she never knew existed, and then leave. And so we're following Bethany as she slowly starts to unravel some deep family secrets and what those mean for her and what people have not told her whole life, while also she's like getting to know this aunt. And this is a young adult sci-fi book, which you might not guess the sci-fi part based off of that plot, but it is young adult sci-fi, and I gave it a 4-star. I thought it was still quite enjoyable. I like obviously knew the secret going in since I've read it before, but out of young adult books, I do feel like this like holds up with age. And I remember Margaret Peterson Haddix being a great writer. I still feel like I felt it even with my frontal lobe developed, so this was a good one. After that, I listened to The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife by Anna Johnston, which is a contemporary book that I gave 4 stars to. We follow a man who is down on his luck, elderly, and about to be homeless, and he accidentally, by a series of crazy coincidences, ends up sort of taking the identity of Frederick Fife, who lives at an all-expenses-paid retirement home and starts to live his life and kind of has to navigate doing that as a secret. It is such a unique premise that I feel like is so creative, because like with kind of identity theft, like it's good-hearted, but like with identity theft like that, any mistake he made is just signed off to being like dementia, even though our main character doesn't have dementia. And like our main character is having to figure out like the relationships that Frederick had with people and just how things work at the nursing home, and he ends up building some great relationships. It's really cute. It's a feel-good book, and I do recommend this one. Next, we move into The Academy by Ellen Hildebrand, which I gave a 4.5 stars. It's a contemporary book that I really, really loved. Ellen Hildebrand has done many a Nantucket books, but this was her first like non-Nantucket book, and she wrote it with her daughter. I think her daughter was kind of like consulting for young people culture to make it seem real. But it takes place at a boarding school and follows multiple different characters in the boarding school as just like wild boarding school things happen. Like there's some social media involved that's like their version of Yik Yak. It's called Zip Zap. If you were ever in schools around the time of Yik Yak, does that still happen? I don't know. I feel like it happened during my high school and like happened in colleges while I was in high school, but I don't know if Yik Yak has had a comeback since then. Some relationships that aren't supposed to be happening, like a little bits of secrets and mysteries. I was engrossed. I felt like the setting was great. I was so into like all of the tea and the drama, and I had a really good time reading it. I definitely recommend The Academy by Ellen Hildebrand. We're getting into the final stretch. Next, I read Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez, which is a historical literary book that I gave 3.75 stars to. This is another one that is rated super highly on Goodreads, where a young black nurse becomes a whistleblower on questionable ethical, as in their unethical, practices happening around reproductive rights to young black women in Alabama in the like post-segregation area. It's based on true happenings, so I think it's very important to read to know about the things that have happened. The helping dynamics in it were so interesting, like so good to be analyzed, and I think this is a really good example of fiction being able to be a good like informative storyteller, where as you're reading the book you're just listening to a story and getting to know the characters, but it is real life happenings, and even though these characters aren't real people have that same story from the past, and knowing where history has gone wrong is very, very important to ensure that we don't let history repeat itself. And for that, this book is definitely 100% worth your time. Total change of mood, but after that I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer, which is a horror book that I gave 3.25 stars to. Miss Main character gets a knock on her door one night from a family who claims to have used to live in the house. It was the dad's childhood home, and he asks if he can show his family around. Initially she says no, but eventually, being a little bit people-pleasing, she lets them in, and once they're in, they don't leave, and it becomes a horror book. It was quite the experience. I feel like a lot of people have been reading this book lately, and I like hearing people's thoughts on it. It's just kind of another like weird one where at the end I wasn't necessarily like, wow, that was such a good book, but I was like, wow, that was an interesting journey. So if that sounds intriguing to you, then worth your time. My one single nonfiction of the past 3 months, How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. This is a short and sweet little self-help book that, I mean, like its title says, just gives like mindset shifts and quick little tips for ways to just like manage like chores and home things and cleaning and organization as a person. It kind of frees you a lot because it goes into like mindset shifts and how sometimes a lot of the burdens you're feeling are not from things that are actual rules and are just things that like we're told are rules. So it kind of just like challenges that and then like gives you ideas for systems that can allow you to just like be living in your life more pleasantly and not feel so burdened by like taking care of your home and your space, while also feeling burdened by like everything else that happens in life. So I thought it was short and sweet. I think it can be super helpful. It is very accessible, which I think is awesome. And I mean, I don't always love nonfiction books because I get bored, but this one was good. This one was, like I said, short and sweet, and I think it could be worth your time if it sounds like something that could be beneficial to you. The last one that I did not like, will be on a good streak after this. It's Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. I ended up giving this book a 1 star. I listened to its audiobook, and I mentioned this in a vlog recently. I think the audiobook part ruined it for me because the narrator's voice was just like grating to my soul, and the voices she made for characters made them just sound like dumb cartoons. And it's Holly Jackson's, I'm pretty sure it's her adult debut, but it did not read adult at all. It still just read YA, except then it would like talk about them being 27. And I was like, that's crazy. What do you mean you're 27? But the premise is interesting. The premise is that someone tries to murder our main character Jet, except she ends up living and she has like a bone fragment in her brain where she basically is going to have an aneurysm that will kill her in 7 days. But since she has 7 days to live, she decides to try to solve her own murder. Very interesting. I didn't love the book. It was a waste of my time. People might disagree. I think it would be a waste of yours. I think you can pass on this one. There's so many good books in this world. Don't waste your time. After that, I read We're All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter, which is a crime thriller, and it is the beginning of a new series for her. She wrote the Will Trent series, which I really, really enjoyed, so it was unique being in a new series, but this one follows the kidnapping of 2 girls, and it kind of switches. About 100 pages into it, we're following the kidnapping of 2 girls. We're trying to figure out what happened. It's a typical crime thriller in a small town in Georgia, but then it switches its perspective in a way that I wasn't suspecting, and so I don't want to give it to you. I'll let you read it and figure out how, but I gave it a 4 stars. I think it was very solid. I'm intrigued to see where this series will go, but I really like Karen Slaughter's writing. After that, I really got into some dark books because it was like around Halloween. After that, I read Too Scared to Sleep by Andrew Duplessis, which is a anthology of short stories that are YA horror. They had some really interesting ones. I feel like short stories are always weird to me because some of them are such hits and some of them are such misses. I don't think you have to read this. I just don't know if I'll ever like really recommend a short story collection. There were intriguing stories. It was kind of nice leading up to Halloween. I don't think you need to spend your time on it. Second to last, I read Cackle by Rachel Harrison. Our main character moves into a small town, befriends a super friendly, beautiful woman in this small town that everyone else in the town kind of seems to be a little hesitant of, and then starts noticing maybe there's some supernatural things about this woman, and it is classified as horror. This is not a horror book. It's like cozy, intriguing with some supernatural elements. It is not a horror book, but it was good. I rated it 4 stars. There's some like spider elements in kind of like a cute way in this book, and I swear to you, as I was reading this book, like spiders were following it around. The amount of times I saw a spider while reading this book is more than like the past months combined. It was kind of insane, but I think this is a really cute one. I haven't read any other Rachel Harrison books. This felt like a good place to start. I intend to read her other ones, and I think this could definitely be worth your time. And then lastly, in October, I read Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister, which is a slow mystery, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Our main character sees on the news that there is a hostage situation going down in London where there are 3 hostages and a man holding them at gunpoint, and she learns that the perpetrator, is her husband, who left for work like normal that morning. This is totally out of character for him. She has no idea what led to like this happening, and it ends up being that 1 hostage escapes, 2 are killed, and the perpetrator disappears. And so it's not a thriller in the sense that things are fast and twisty-turny and you're like moving along with the plot, but it is a mystery in the sense that we're following this woman as she's trying to figure out why what led to her husband doing that. It was interesting. If you're fine with a slower mystery, I think it could be worth your time. If you're really more about like thrills and plot twists, then I think probably less so. I don't hate that I read it, but I wouldn't necessarily go back and pick it up again. Those are all the books I read in the past 3 months. It has obviously gotten dark out in the time that I've been talking, if you can see the lighting changes in the video, so I won't hold you up too much longer, but let me know which ones of these you will be picking up next. And also, if you have any great recommendations for me, let me know. With nothing else, please like this video, subscribe to me if you feel so inclined, and the invitation is always open to join this channel as a member, become one of B's besties. All information is available, as well as all of the perks that are open to you as a channel member if you click the join button on my channel. I appreciate you so much. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.